Today we're going to talk about a topic that has many, many facets to it, and that is leadership. Leadership is an ever-evolving and ever-complex and a deepening of wisdom continuously. What makes somebody a good leader? What makes somebody, want to be followed? How do we even access this energy of leadership? I have a very simple definition of leadership. It says, turn around, is anybody following you because they want to? And so as we start to explore this definition of leadership, we're going to focus very specifically on servant leadership, the ability to show up to be in service to others. And that is what servant leadership is at the heart of it. How can I be of service to those that are following me? And so what does that mean? And what does it mean that we need to internalize around who we are and how we show up in the world? Now, when I'm talking about leadership, maybe you find yourself leading in a business context where you have a team of people that you're responsible for helping achieve certain goals and objectives. You are also a leader in your family, you're a leader in your community, you're a leader in your churches, you're a leader in your friendship groups, and all great leaders know when to follow. That sometimes I am in a leadership role and sometimes I'm in a fellowship role. And so to be of service actually starts with us having an awareness of what is expected of me, what is required of me, and am I doing what is needed here? Servant leadership, if we break it down, we need to start understanding that this word servant or service that we talk about has many interesting aspects to it. And as I've worked with many people over a very long time, and good on 30 years, I've seen many versions of what servant leadership can look like. And even to be of service in your life, I've seen how that can access a shadow side and a light side. And so I'm going to introduce you to 3 versions of the way servant leadership can play out in the world, and to see what it is that that provokes for you. See what that is that invites you to explore in yourself. To be of service means that you truly need to interrogate the part of you that may enter the world being a servant. To be a servant is not the same as being of service. And so if we said being of service is what we are aiming for, being a servant may not help us achieve that. And there's one other aspect to this, is that I may actually show up as a slave. And so we're going to talk about 3 ways that we can show up to try and be of service. One is as a slave, the other is as a servant, and the other one is in service. And to notice that the great possibilities of being in service means that we have to deal with some of our own insecurities and beliefs and thoughts and ideas. So let's explore these 3 things: a slave, a servant, and somebody that's in service. And let's just explore them in terms of how they are different and then how they translate into leadership. If we first look at the archetype of slave, to be enslaved means there's a master that's governing all the choices that I am making. So I fundamentally don't have choice. I just need to comply, because if I don't, I will get into trouble. And so as I walk through the world, I notice what I can't do more than what I can do. And I try and stay out of trouble by making sure that whoever I'm enslaved to is happy with what I'm doing. Now, the challenge with being a slave, if you think about any typical slave movie you've seen or book you've read, or even just the images that come up for you, is enslavement means that I really live by somebody else's rules. And secondly, there's this strange polarity between being grateful for the person that I'm enslaved to for keeping me fed or watered or looked after, but also deeply, deeply resistant to that because I don't have my freedom. Now, leaders that show up in slave mentality essentially are at the front of the line of the chain gang, pulling along everybody by the sort of, this is the step we must take. Really trying to pull people to a vision, make them follow you, but by walking in your steps, just doing it the way you must do it, making sure we don't get into trouble. So progress can be really slow. There's no real thoughts and creativity. And we've got groupthink that holds things at a very low opportunity for growth. The enslaved leader is not able to be of service. What we see with the enslaved leader is a lot of misery, frustration, anger, and bullying that happens. To break up with being a slave, we need to realize what are the rules of the game we're playing by and choose to play our game in those rules. Free ourselves from needing to make sure that we only do things one way, but find multiple ways to do it. You may have moved from being a slave to being a servant. Let's think about what a servant is. A servant shows up and takes the order and makes sure exactly what is asked for is delivered. Don't ask any questions, don't do too much around that. You can make some suggestions along the way if you're a great servant. But largely, it's a role of deliver what is asked of you. What this means is, as a servant, we don't always have a true voice. We don't really own our own power in terms of what it is that we are offering into the world. In many ways, the servant gets walked all over. And so we end up finding a lot of burnout and self-sacrifice that happens in the servant energy. To be of servant as a leader means that you're trying to keep everybody happy all the time. And I don't know if you've tried that, but it doesn't work. Trying to keep your customers happy, your staff happy, your boss happy, everybody in your life happy at your expense is not a strategy for leading. It lacks courage, it lacks the ability to have tough conversations. It's essentially a people-pleasing that can enter into the way that we're navigating things. So it's not your job to keep people happy, but it is, as a leader's role, a responsibility to create an environment where people can thrive and be their best selves. And so as we learn to focus on the environment, not on trying to keep everybody happy, we can make that shift. You will see in the picture the strategy of the servant leadership is that self-sacrifice, lying down and letting everybody walk all over them. And it looks like a hero. It looks like somebody who's helping. But at the end of the day, you're depleted and exhausted and don't have much of yourself to give into the system. So if you're not a slave, entrapped by your own fears of getting into trouble, and you're not a servant that's sacrificing yourself to keep everybody happy at your own expense, we start to then access the leader that is in service. And this is the true leader that shows up and says, my role is to support and remove obstacles for those that are on their way to achieving what we're trying to achieve. So I'm not here to worry and make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. My job is to receive the concerns and say, this is our obstacle, this is our challenge, this is our problem, and to listen, empathize, and help remove the obstacles so people are free to move and achieve and create and do what they need to do. To truly be in service as a leader means that you've transferred worry, you've transferred responsibility, and you've transferred decision making. What I mean by that is you have created a space where everybody can come to you, not you follow up with them. you're available to support them, and you bring your gifts, your decision making, your talents and your ideas, your creativity and your inspiration as tools to be able to empower and support others in the journey. So as you start to reflect on your leadership style with relation to service, it's useful to notice your fears, your strategies of people pleasing, and also your true ability to let others be free around you to do things their way and to empower them into achieving what it is that you all want to achieve. These are big topics. These are things that require grace and gentleness as you reflect on your own leadership journey. And every day when we have the courage to do one small thing differently, we open up possibilities for great transformation. Sending you lots of love. Namaste.